Welcome to the Quiet Scientist. I'm so glad you're here, whether you're settling into bed, listening under the soft hum of a ceiling fan, or just are letting your mind wander somewhere gentle. Thank you for spending a little time with this quiet corner of the world. Tonight, let's drift towards something slow and powerful, something that breathes beneath your feet, though you never see it. A force older than civilization and just as mysterious. Imagine a sleeping giant, not with fists and fury, but with breath made of fire, slow and low beneath the earth. You live on a planet with a heart that glows. Volcanoes. They rumble in stories. They whisper in dreams. But in truth, they rarely shout. Most of the time, they sleep. They wait. They shape the world not with speed, but with slow exhalations of molten rock and ancient memory. So tonight, we ask, what really lies beneath a volcano? What is magma, and why does it rise? I hope this story helps you relax, or even drift off to sleep. But if you do stay awake, that's perfectly fine, because you just might come away with a few secrets whispered from the inside of the earth. Before we drift too far into tonight's story, a gentle like or subscribe would mean a lot to me, and it helps. The Quiet Scientist keep growing quietly, and while you're here, if you feel like it, leave a little comment and tell me where you're listening from or what time it is where you are. It's always lovely to hear how far this quiet thoughts can travel. Of course, nothing in tonight's story is medical advice, just soft science and softer imagination. Now, take a slow breath in, let it rise like warm vapor, and exhale gently, as if releasing a puff of steam into the air. We begin long ago, long before books, before cities, even before the moon had drifted fully into place, that this planet was still deciding what shape it wanted to be. The crust beneath your feet was thinner then, cracked in places, shifting constantly. If you could have walked there, you might have seen the land bubbling like oatmeal on a stove, the ground still learning to settle, and beneath it all, a liquid core pulsed with unimaginable heat. Not angry, not cruel, just hot. Hot enough to melt metal, hot enough to melt rock, hot enough to remake the world again and again. This core wasn't alone. Wrapped around it was the mantle, a thick layer that flows slowly, like warm honey. It's not liquid, exactly. It's not solid either. It moves in slow motion over millions of years, and within that mantle, there are pockets, places where the heat rises, where pressure builds, where the rock begins to melt. That's where magma is born. Magma is not just melted rock. It's a combination of heat, pressure, minerals, and memory. It contains bits of the past, bubbles of gas from deep time, crystals suspended like thoughts not yet formed. Sometimes, this magma finds a way upward through cracks in the earth, through weak spots in the crust, through places where tectonic plates pull apart or collide. It doesn't rush. It rises slowly, like warm air from a teacup, and when it finally breaks the surface, it's no longer magma, it's lava. But before it erupts, there's a hush. Volcanoes in their resting state are mountains with secrets. From the outside, they can look peaceful, slopes covered in snow, forests blooming along their flanks, clouds drifting overhead as if nothing stirs below. But inside, something is always moving, pressure is building, gases are shifting, and yet, most volcanoes never erupt, not in a human lifetime, not even in 100, Some sleep for thousands of years, their mouths sealed, their fire held deep. Others release their breath gently, fumaroles hissing, warm springs bubbling, steam escaping from unseen vents. They are not monsters. They are not disasters. They are parts of the earth doing what they've always done, balancing heat and pressure, remaking the surface, reminding us that stillness is sometimes an illusion. The word volcano comes from Vulcan, the Roman god of fire and forge, a being who worked in heat and hammer, crafting in secret. There's something beautiful in that metaphor. A volcano is not just destruction, it is also creation. It builds new land, it enriches the soil, it warms waters that might otherwise freeze. Imagine standing near one, quiet, dormant, its flanks covered in moss and mist. You feel a strange warmth underfoot, a scent in the air like sulfur, like stone, a distant sound, not loud, but low, like a breath that takes a century to finish. You wouldn't run, you wouldn't panic, you'd simply listen, because volcanoes are slow storytellers. And so, as we begin our long journey through magma and mystery, know that we will move gently, not in eruptions, but in murmurs. We'll explore what burns below the surface, not just in the planet, but perhaps in ourselves. Let's follow that warmth downward toward the place where stone begins to melt and where the earth dreams in glowing red. Beneath your feet, farther down than any drill has dared to go, there is a warmth that never stops pulsing. It moves not like wind or water, but like something ancient stretching in its sleep. You can't hear it, you can't feel it, but it is always there. The earth's heart is not quiet, even if it pretends to be. You begin to sink, gently, in your imagination, down through the crust, solid, stubborn, broken here and there like a cracked eggshell, past the granite and basalt, through forgotten layers of buried forests and fossilized creatures. The temperature climbs, and everything grows darker, heavier, slower. Down you go, the mantle cradles you, not liquid like a sea, not solid like a wall. It flows, but it takes its time, like honey poured in winter or warm wax under a soft flame. This is where magma is born, not from chaos, but from patience. The rocks here melt slowly, pushed by pressure, coaxed by heat. Tiny grains become fluid, crystals begin to shimmer, and soon what was once stone becomes a slow, glowing river inside the earth. Magma isn't just hot, it's heavy with story. It holds elements formed in ancient stars, minerals shaped over eons, gases trapped in rock since before animals ever breathed. It remembers things your species never saw, and yet it is not finished. It rises, as if curious about the surface. You float beside it now, watching. Bubbles form and rise inside this molten sea, like thoughts rising in a dreaming mind. Each one carries gases, carbon dioxide, sulfur, water vapor, all pressing upward. If they cannot escape, the pressure grows. And when the pressure's enough, something must give, but not yet. Somewhere, deep inside a magma chamber, the heat continues. The magma pulses slowly, its own heartbeat echoing the planet's. It begins to push upward, not in a rush, but like a memory returning to the surface. It slips into cracks, then into chambers, then into waiting gaps in the crust. Sometimes that journey never ends. The magma cools and hardens beneath the surface, forming deep layers of igneous rock. Other times, it finds a path all the way up, a vent, a fault, a weakness, and suddenly it is no longer magma. It is lava, and the world above must change. But let's stay below for a little longer, because the deeper you go, the stranger things become. The heat is no longer something you can measure with a thermometer. It's a pressure you feel in your chest, in your teeth, in your bones. It is a warmth that forgets mercy, but not out of cruelty. It simply is, constant, radiating, steady as breath. In this deep world, there are no right angles, no straight lines. Everything bends, folds, flows. Stone moves like thought, slow but relentless. You watch as mantle plumes rise, great columns of molten rock ascending like underwater smoke. They come from places near the core where the heat is unimaginable. These plumes do not burn, they become. Over millions of years, they shape continents, break open oceans, give birth to chains of volcanoes that rise one by one like pearls on a molten thread. The planet beneath you is not a finished sculpture. It is a work in progress, always changing, always warm inside. And magma, this glowing, churning, semi liquid memory, is the artist's hand. It paints with pressure, it sculpts with patience. And sometimes it writes in fire. You drifting now near a magma chamber that has been resting for centuries. It doesn't hum. It doesn't glow like a cartoon. It is quiet, slow, watchful. Around it are layers of older rock, once magma themselves, now solid, sleeping. You run a mental finger across their surface. It's like reading Braille written by the earth. These are the layers that tell you how the planet has lived and breathed across time, each one a page in a deep, wordless book. Some are thin, sharp, formed in quick eruptions that barely reach the surface. Others are thick and dense, formed from slow cooling beneath the ground. No fire, no ash, just silent transformation. Even now, the heat below keeps shaping what lies above. Mountains rise, crumble, rise again. Islands appear where there were none. Gases once sealed in stone now whisper their way into the sky, slowly changing the air. You breathe that air, unaware that it began its journey below the ground, among fire and stone. You think of magma as something violent, explosive, dangerous, but tonight you see it differently. You see it as something necessary, something thoughtful, something alive in its own slow way. It is not an enemy, it is part of your home, and like all good things that live in the dark, it asks for no credit. It moves slowly, it supports silently, and only occasionally, only when it must, it rises to remind you that the world is still becoming. In this quiet moment, far beneath the ground, you begin to understand something soft and strange, that the world below is not separate from the world above. They are one, held together by heat, pressure, and time. You breathe again, a little slower now, not because anything has changed, but because you've touched, for just a moment, the slow rhythm of the earth itself. As you linger in the warmth below, the air above begins to shift, not in any sudden way, but like the hush that falls before a deep sigh. You rise slowly now, pulled upward by curiosity and quiet wonder, toward a time when the world was still smoothing the wrinkles of its skin, still learning how to breathe. Back then, long before names and nations, the earth exhaled differently. The land was not yet quiet. It crackled, hissed, roared in slow, rumbling voices, and towering over the primeval landscape were the first volcanoes, massive, wild, and newborn. They did not yet understand subtlety. They were bold sculptures of molten breath, shaped by forces still raw with energy. These were not the neatly sloped cones you might picture. They were jagged, sprawling, unpredictable. Some stretched upward like crooked spires, others collapsed into deep bowls, their mouths yawning from exhaustion. There was no pattern yet, just motion, constant and uneven, and through these towering openings in the earth, magma rose like thought made visible. You find yourself drifting among them now, not as a visitor, but as a quiet presence, invisible and weightless. You hover above a young volcano as it murmurs, not roaring, not yet, just murmuring. Gases whisper from cracks. The ground trembles softly, like the shiver that comes before a sigh. You don't run, you float, and then it breathes. Not in one thunderous explosion, but in layers. A plume of ash escapes first, gray, then black, then swirling with hints of rust and violet. It rises high into the newborn sky, surprising the clouds. Then comes the lava, slow and glowing, tumbling down the sides like syrup from a cracked jar. The ground doesn't scream. It groans, deep and low, like a giant shifting in its slumber. It's not just destruction, it's choreography. The mountain is dancing with gravity and pressure, responding to rhythms written in stone. You begin to see this not as violence, but as release, a necessary exhale after a very long inhale, one that took centuries to build. Around the base of this fiery colossus, something odd begins to happen. The ground cools, ash settles, and life somehow begins again. Small ferns peek through the soot. Insects explore the warmth. What looked like an ending begins to reveal itself as a beginning. You drift backward in time a little more, further still into Earth's past. Here, you find undersea volcanoes erupting in silence, hidden beneath the waves. They're older than memory, older than bones. Their lava does not explode. It cools quickly in the water, forming strange pillow-like shapes, smooth and bulbous, stacked one atop another like the dreams of a sleeping ocean. These undersea eruptions gave rise to islands, places that would one day feel the wind, bear fruit, host stories, but right now they are only ideas, still rising from the seabed, still dripping with warmth and the promise of sky. Volcanoes have always been part of the Earth's language, long before speech, before music, before written stories. There were these fire-breathing mountains. They were the first storytellers, leaving trails of ash, layers of cooled basalt, rivers of obsidian that caught the light like frozen midnight. Somewhere in your imagination, you see one of these early volcanoes growing over time. Each eruption adds a layer. Each pause allows rest. The shape of the mountain shifts, softens, and settles into something familiar. You realize the volcano is not simply a thing. Oh, it is a record, a history written in fire and cooled by patience. Even as you hover in this ancient world, a sense of closeness lingers. These volcanoes, though distant in time, are kin to the ones that sleep beneath today's landscapes, the ones tucked beneath forests, beneath fields, beneath cities. They are quieter now, but they still breathe, slowly, steadily, and so does the earth. You imagine standing at the foot of one of these mountains, your feet bare on cooling lava, your breath mingling with the sulfur sweet air. There is no fear, only awe, the kind that doesn't shout, but settles deep in your chest, the kind of awe that reminds you you are living on a planet that creates itself from the inside out. Time passes differently near volcanoes, not in seconds or minutes, but in flows and pulses, in periods of silence and sudden release. In the slow layering of moments that become stone, you think again of that early volcano, the one you hovered above as it exhaled its ash and fire. You imagine how, over the next 100,000 years, it will change, it will erode, it will collapse. Maybe it will erupt again, maybe it will crumble into the sea, and maybe someday someone else will stand where you once floated, running a hand over the cooled rock, wondering what stories it might tell. The earth has always whispered in layers, and volcanoes are one of its clearest whispers, loud only when they must be, but always speaking, even in silence. You return now to the edge of the mantle, where magma continues its slow rise. The past remains behind you, tucked into stone, and ahead lies a different kind of motion, the lava that makes its way to the surface, not to destroy, but to shape. You exhale slowly, the kind of exhale that doesn't end in sleep, but in a softened gaze and a slower heartbeat. You understand now, volcanoes are not moments, they are memories, still floating in the warmth of the planet's memory. You begin to notice something gentle shifting beneath the surface, a slow stir, not like a storm, but like someone waking from a long and peaceful nap. The magma, that glowing mixture of rock and time, begins to move again, not with urgency, but with purpose. You drift beside it, and it feels almost musical. There is rhythm in the way it flows, timing in its turns. It doesn't rush forward, it coils, swells, pauses. Lava is never in a hurry. It knows where it's going, and even more than that, it seems to know how it wants to arrive. Imagine it now, magma rising quietly, meeting the open air and cooling into lava. A transformation not unlike breath meeting cold morning light. The first contact releases a soft hiss, a curling tendril of steam, and then the dance begins. Thick ribbons of lava unfurl over the land like liquid silk, glowing with deep oranges and reds that pulse with inner heat. Some lava flows in smooth sheets, like cream poured across a dark counter. This is Pehoho, its name whispered from the Hawaiian language, shaped by those who watched its grace for centuries. It folds and twists and gleams. You could almost believe it was alive, the way it loops over itself, creating ropey patterns that cool into textures like elephant skin or braided rivers. Then there is rough, sharp, clinking with broken sounds. This lava stumbles more than dances. It pushes forward in thick, jagged lumps, each one crusted and crackling. Watching it is like watching the earth shrug off a heavy coat, one stiff, smoking piece at a time. You drift above both forms now, marveling at their contrast. One flows like a lullaby, the other like a determined old mountain trying to remember how to walk. But both are lava, both are heat made visible, and both are reshaping the land, even as they cool. Cooling is part of the dance, too. As lava meets air or water, it loses its glow. The top hardens into a dark, glassy crust, but underneath, warmth lingers, sometimes Long after the surface has turned black and still, the inside remains hot, moving quietly like an idea that refuses to be forgotten. In certain places, when lava meets ocean, the performance grows more dramatic. You hover there now, watching. As molten rock pours into the sea, clouds of steam rise like incense from a cathedral of fire. The hiss is soft but powerful. The water doesn't rage, it surrenders. And together, the lava and sea create something new, fresh land, young and steaming, waiting for moss, for seeds, for footprints. Oh, it's a reminder that lava is not the end of things, it's the beginning. What it touches, it does not always destroy. Sometimes it gives, sometimes it builds. Whole islands owe their existence to lava's slow choreography, its deep, glowing patience. You drift above one such island now, newborn and raw. Steam lifts from its rocks like breath. There are no trees yet, no birds, just rock, warmth, and silence. But even here, life is listening. In time, it will come, it always does. You dip lower, closer to the hardened flows. The patterns left behind tell stories, ridges, cracks, spirals. Some flows look like frozen rivers, others like broken glass scattered by a thoughtful hand. You reach out with your mind, touching the surface, and imagine how hot it once was. Now it is solid, cold, but full of memory. In some places, the crust breaks. Beneath it, you glimpse the lingering glow, a reminder that even when things appear still, something can be moving underneath, waiting, preparing. This is how lava teaches, not by rushing, but by showing that change happens one breath at a time. And sometimes, the lava doesn't flow at all. It fountains, shooting into the air like a glowing geyser. You watch one now in slow motion. It rises in arcs and sparks, red as embers, gold at the edges. As it falls back to earth, it lands in puddles and cones, reshaping the world by inches. Each drop seems deliberate, like punctuation in the middle of a sentence the planet has been writing for millennia. From far away, the spectacle seems powerful, maybe even frightening, but up close, in this dreamy stillness, it feels like art. You see not just heat, but intention, not just eruption, but expression. Lava is the handwriting of the earth, each flow a signature left on stone. And like all dances, there's an end, the flow slows, the light dims, the crust thickens and cracks. Soon the lava is still, but the movement is not forgotten. It has shaped valleys, it has carved paths, it has rewritten the story of the land. Even now, life is waiting to return. Seeds will drift in on the wind, rain will fall, tiny organisms will nestle into cracks, carrying with them the quiet beginnings of forests, of meadows, of homes. All of it built on lava, on fire that danced until it became solid ground. You hover now above one of these old flows, cooled long ago. A forest has grown here, trees tall and swaying, their roots curling around old ridges of rock. Birds flit through the canopy. The air smells of leaves and soil. No one who walks here today would guess that the land beneath their feet once glowed like the sun. But the earth remembers, and now, so do you. You breathe out slowly, the way lava cools, the way fire learns to rest. The forest hums quietly behind you now, resting atop the memory of lava's dance. You drift onward, carried not by wind or waves, but by the slow momentum of curiosity. Ahead lies a mountain that does not move. It sits still, wrapped in mist, its peak lost in low hanging clouds. It is a volcano, but not one in motion. Not today. You come to rest near its side, where the earth feels unusually warm and the air smells faintly of sulfur, like burnt matches after a storm. It hasn't erupted in a long time. Generations have walked its slopes, forgetting that anything ever stirred below. But if you listen carefully, if you settle into the hush beneath birdsong and breeze, you'll hear it. A sound that isn't sound at all. It's the sound of a volcano thinking. You might imagine that volcanoes, when silent, are simply off, empty, but that isn't true. Stillness, here, does not mean absence, it means gathering, holding, listening. Beneath the crust, the magma chamber stretches like a sleeping lung, full but quiet. Pressure shifts, gases collect, cracks widen, then seal. The mountain is deciding, not with words, not even with will, but with temperature, chemistry, tension. You feel it in the rocks beneath your feet, in the steady hum of something vast and unseen. It's not a warning, not a threat. It's just thought, the kind of thought that moves slower than seasons, deeper than roots. Sensors placed by scientists, small machines tucked into the soil or perched on stone, can catch pieces of this thought. Tiny tremors, too soft for human senses, changes in gas composition, minute swells in the ground. To the careful eye, they look like signs, but to the mountain, they're more like stretches, breaths, shifts in weight before a turn in sleep. You sit at the mountain's base, invisible and safe, and let your awareness melt into the rhythm of it. It's not suspenseful, it's meditative. The volcano is not building toward an eruption. It is simply being, like an old library full of books no one has yet read. All the knowledge is there, but it rests. Occasionally, a low growl rises through the stone, not enough to startle, more like a purring cat beneath a thick blanket. The mountain has a language of vibrations, and if you lie very still, you can almost hear its thoughts passing through your body like soft echoes. The locals who live nearby, farmers, hikers, children walking home from school, carry an unspoken awareness of this mountain's quiet state. They speak of it casually, like a neighbor who's always kept to himself. They know it has a past, they know it could change, but for now, it sleeps. And in that sleep, there is peace. Volcanoes don't erupt from anger. They erupt when they can no longer hold, like a cloud that becomes too heavy with rain, like laughter that escapes after too much silence. Eruption is not the start of a story. It is the release of everything that has been building in the background, unnoticed by most. As you sit with the mountain, you begin to see that thinking, in this sense, isn't something conscious. It's geological. It's the way atoms shift, the way heat moves through rock, the way time presses into matter until something must change. You imagine the mountain's internal chambers, wide and glowing, yet closed. Magma flows in and pools as gas builds in pockets, like sighs that haven't been breathed yet. And all around it, the crust stretches slightly, almost imperceptibly, as the mountain adjusts its weight. One day, perhaps, it will erupt, but not now, not yet. There is something beautiful about a volcano in waiting. Its restraint is not weakness, it is poise. Somewhere higher up the slope, steam slips from a vent, curling into the morning air. You follow it for a moment, letting its warmth touch your skin. It smells of minerals and secrets, the kind of scent that makes you feel as though the earth has just whispered your name. Birds land nearby, hopping along the rocky ground. They are unbothered. This is their home, too. They don't wonder when the volcano will erupt. They live in the space between thoughts, content with the now. A soft rumble passes through the soil again, not a threat, but a lullaby. The volcano is shifting in its sleep, and you, still drifting beside it, feel no urge to run. You are safe here, quiet. You are part of the waiting. There's a lesson in this stillness, a reminder that not all thinking needs words, that sometimes the deepest processes happen beneath the surface, unseen and slow, that pressure does not always mean explosion. Sometimes it just means change. You lie back on the warm ground, imagining the veins of magma miles below. They don't glow red like fire, they glow softly, like embers tucked into the hollow of the earth's chest. They pulse, they pause, they press, but they do not rush. And as you listen, truly listen, you begin to hear the world in a new way, not through noise, but through presence, through warmth, through breath. The volcano is still, but it is not silent. You close your eyes and match its rhythm, a heartbeat made of stone, a mind shaped by time, a thought that stretches over centuries, waiting patiently for the right moment to rise. You remain still for a moment longer, wrapped in the mountain's warmth, the low tremble beneath you fading like the last note of a lullaby. Then, as though caught by a gentle current, you begin to drift again, not upward, not downward, but outward, over the surface of the world, past forests and rivers, over farmlands and cities, across the skin of continents. And then, blue, endless blue, the ocean spreads below you, a slow-moving canvas stretched wide beneath the sky. You hover above its surface, silent and weightless, watching as the clouds reflect in the waves. It feels peaceful here, so calm, so still, but the earth, as always, keeps a secret underneath, deep below the sea, beneath miles of dark and pressure. Volcanoes continue their quiet work. Unlike their cousins on land, they rarely show their faces. They erupt without spectacle, shaping the world in hidden strokes. And yet, from time to time, one of these submarine builders reaches just a little higher and breaks through, and that's how an island begins. You find yourself floating above such a place now. At first, there's nothing but ripples, then a thin plume of steam, a dark smear of cooled lava just beneath the waves, the beginnings of a thought pushing into the open air. The process is not fast. It might take years, decades, centuries. Lava rises in pulses, cooling quickly in the water, stacking on itself like slow, stony breath. Bit by bit, it builds up from the seafloor, growing taller, broader, stronger, until one day it reaches the surface and touches the sun. The first moment is quiet. The ocean hisses as if surprised. The clouds part gently. A small patch of land, raw and steaming, appears where there was none. No name yet, no flag, just stone. From your vantage point above, it's almost comical in its modesty. A bump on the sea, but you know better. This island is not small. It is the tip of something immense, the visible crest of a mountain born of fire. Beneath the waves, its slopes descend deeper than any forest is tall. Islands formed by volcanoes are everywhere, scattered like freckles across the world's oceans, Hawaii, Iceland, the Galapagos, the Canary Islands, all born from molten threads pulled up from the planet's mantle. Each one tells a different story. Some are young, still speckled with steam and fresh basalt. Others are ancient, their volcanic roots hidden by centuries of soil and trees and song. You drift now to one of these older islands where time has softened the sharp edges. The lava flows are buried beneath fields. Birds nest in cliffs once formed by ash. Children play on black sand beaches, never wondering what lies beneath their feet. But the island remembers every ridge, every valley, every strange curve in the coastline. Each was shaped by eruptions long past. Even the soil, rich and dark, owes its strength to the minerals in volcanic ash. Without fire, there would be no garden here, no fruit, no forest. And in that quiet knowing, you begin to see the gift volcanoes give. They are not simply events, they are origins. They do not only erupt, they emerge again and again. They form new places for life to begin. You drift inland now, across the spine of the island. Old lava flows cut across the terrain, now overgrown, but still visible from above. Dark ribbons winding through green hills. You follow one, tracing its path back to a now quiet cone, half covered in mist. It looks harmless now, softened by time, but it once poured fire into the sea, and from that fire, this whole island grew, imagine, just for a moment, being the first living thing to reach a brand new volcanic island, a wind-blown seed, a drifting bit of moss, a curious seabird, no competition, no footsteps, just space, heat, silence, and the promise of beginnings. That's how ecosystems are born, one arrival at a time. Life trickles in slowly, like dew. Each new visitor finds something useful, a bit of shelter in a cooled lava tube, a puddle of rain caught in a crater, a crack in the rock deep enough to anchor a root. Over years, centuries, these quiet arrivals become forests, fields, homes, and humans, too, are drawn to volcanic islands. They build near the coast, fish in the warm waters, farm in the fertile ground. They hike the old calderas and watch the steam rise from hot springs. Some whisper stories about the mountain gods that sleep beneath the soil. Others simply go about their days, living atop the fire without ever quite touching it. You hover above it all now, watching the island breathe. It's not just a place, it's a memory of movement, a shape made by pressure and release, by heat and ocean. And even if the volcano sleeps, its warmth lingers in the stones, in the air, in the way the land slopes gently toward the sea. You drift toward the coast, where waves touch the jagged lava rock with a kind of reverence. The meeting of water and fire is not a battle, it's an embrace. One cools the other, one holds the other in place. And there, at the edge of everything, you feel it again, that paradox that lives in volcanoes. They are destructive, yes, but also deeply generous. They give land, they give warmth, they give stories. You breathe in the salt, heavy air, letting it fill your lungs. The sky is soft above, streaked with fading light, and below. The earth continues its slow, secret work, sending heat upward, shaping islands that one day, perhaps, someone like you will stand on, will wonder about, will call home. You linger near the island's edge, where the warm rock meets the rolling ocean. The air here feels different, soft, thick with minerals, and touched by something ancient. It curls around you as if the earth is gently exhaling, and in a way, it is. With each eruption, each puff of ash or plume of steam, volcanoes have quietly helped build the sky above you, not with hammers or blueprints, but with slow breaths of gas over millions of years. They have been architects of air, sculptors of atmosphere, and though they move at the pace of stone, they have shaped the very air you breathe. You float upward now, rising above the island, above the ocean, into the low-hanging clouds. From this quiet perch, you can see the thin blue film that wraps the earth, a fragile, beautiful shield. It looks delicate from here, like glass spun from dew, but it is thick with history, and volcanoes have left their fingerprints all over it. Long ago, when the earth was new and wild and wrapped in volcanic haze, there was no oxygen in the sky, only carbon dioxide, methane, water vapor, ammonia, gases escaping from deep within the planet's belly. The early atmosphere was thick, what? Difficult, but it was home to possibility. Each eruption added more gases, more heat, more particles, and as time passed and the earth cooled slightly, the atmosphere began to shift. Rain fell, oceans formed, the sky began to clear, little by little, like fog lifting from a mirror. It wasn't quick, it wasn't even steady, but it was constant, because the volcanoes never stopped breathing. You think of them now not as mountains, but as lungs, as long, slow bellows that release the deep breath of the planet in puffs and sighs. The gases they emit, carbon dioxide, water vapor, sulfur dioxide, may seem harsh, but each has played a part in the recipe of air, influencing everything from cloud formation to rainfall to global temperature. And among all those gases, it was the water vapor that mattered most in those early days. Volcanoes released it in enormous quantities, building the humidity of a young planet. When the air grew saturated, it rained, not just gentle showers, but rains that lasted for centuries. The oceans rose, not in floods, but in memory. That water gave life a place to begin, and slowly, life gave oxygen back to the sky. You hover now above a modern volcano, one that steams gently, not with rage, but with rhythm. Its breath carries a cocktail of gases into the air, swirling invisibly upward to join the clouds. The scent is sharp but not unfriendly, a mixture of stone, fire, and sky. You imagine it as a slow conversation between the earth and the atmosphere, words spoken in molecules. Volcanoes have never stopped this quiet contribution. Even now, as you breathe gently in your bed, the air inside your lungs carries atoms once hidden in magma. Traces of volcanic breath curl through every breeze, every gust, every whisper of wind across your face. Almost some of those gases are greenhouse gases. They trap heat in the atmosphere, helping to keep the planet warm. Others form aerosols, tiny particles that reflect sunlight, cooling the earth in delicate balance. It's not always easy to tell if volcanoes are warming the world or cooling it. Like so many things in nature, the answer is both. The sky responds not in fear, but in harmony. At times, when volcanoes erupt violently, they release enormous clouds of ash and gas into the stratosphere, high above the weather. These plumes stretch for miles, blocking sunlight, painting sunsets in colors too strange to name. For years afterward, The planet cools slightly, a temporary lull in the great climate engine. The balance shifts, then returns. You picture now a tiny snowflake forming around a volcanic particle high above the Arctic, drifting down toward the sea, or a single drop of rain clinging to a sulfur rich molecule released from a distant peak. Even these small things carry the memory of eruption, and in this way, volcanoes are everywhere, not just beneath the ground, but above your head, beneath your fingernails, inside the clouds. They are stitched into the weather, the climate, the cycle of breath and wind. There's something whimsical about it, really, that a mountain rumbling in the Pacific could someday shape the color of a sunrise in Europe, or that the air filling your room at this very moment carries the gentle trace of a volcano that hasn't erupted in your lifetime. The past lingers softly in the present, unnoticed but essential. You breathe in slowly, and as you do, you imagine that you're inhaling a gift, the long, slow offering of a volcano from thousands of miles away, filtered by forests and time. It is warm, it is light, it is part of what allows you to be alive, listening now, dreaming. Volcanoes don't ask for recognition, but they have earned it, not only for the fire they bring, but for the invisible threads they've spun into the sky itself. They are the quiet craftspeople of the air, never rushing, never boasting, simply exhaling again and again into the story of Earth. You descend now from your cloudy perch, gently spiraling back toward the sea. The island below you glows with evening warmth, its outlines softened by the setting sun. The volcano rests at its heart, its vent steaming softly, its shoulders wrapped in green. It has given this place everything: land, soil, minerals, and sky. And the sky, in turn, holds you. The sky above the island deepens into lavender, fading gently into night. You rest there for a moment, suspended between sea and stars, held aloft by the hush that comes when the day exhales. But even in this peace, the story of volcanoes continues, only now the air carries a chill. Not all volcanic breath is warm. Some eruptions rise not to build, but to veil. They toss their contents high into the atmosphere, far beyond the clouds that water the land. And when they do, something strange happens to the sky. You drift higher again, this time not into sunlight, but into shadow. A thin, invisible layer stretches here, a place where ash and sulfur and frozen gases gather after a great eruption. They don't fall quickly. They linger, they drift, they spread, and in doing so, they turn the sky into a soft, gray filter, shading the earth below like the canopy of a forgotten forest. It begins not with darkness, but with dimming. Sunlight arrives at the surface just a little paler, just a little later. Shadows soften, colors dull. The warmth you expect in late spring feels like early autumn instead. And before anyone realizes what's happened, the world is colder than it should be. You drift through history now, through time touched by ash and silence. One eruption in 1815, Mount Tambora in Indonesia, released so much ash and gas into the stratosphere that the following year became known as the year without a summer. Crops failed. Snow fell in June. People lit fires in July. The air never quite shook off the chill, and yet it wasn't just suffering. That year, in the misty gloom of Europe, a group of writers gathered by candlelight in a house by a lake. Outside, the weather was eerie and gray, too cold for comfort. Inside, they told ghost stories. One of those stories, dreamed up by Mary Shelley, became Frankenstein. Even in ash, there is imagination. You glide gently through another such moment, Krakatoa, 1883. When it erupted, the explosion was heard thousands of miles away, but it wasn't the sound that lingered, it was the light. For years afterward, sunsets around the world glowed in strange purples and greens. Painters stared at the horizon in awe. Writers described skies that looked like oil spilled across velvet. The world felt surreal, as if some forgotten painter had dipped the brush too deep. Volcanoes, it seems, don't just shape land, they shape memory. In Iceland, too, eruptions have left their mark on sky and soul. The Laki eruption of 1783 had sent a veil of haze across Europe. Livestock died, fields withered, and yet the sky, always the sky, remained unforgettable. People spoke of blood-colored suns and a moon that never quite looked the same. You might think of ash as dirty, but up here, in this quiet space above the world, it looks like lace, thin, drifting, impossibly delicate. It filters the sunlight, softens the harshness, and in doing so, it turns the earth into something dreamlike. The cooling that follows these eruptions doesn't arrive in storms. It's subtle, gradual, the way morning comes more slowly after a long night. And not all volcanoes do this, only the largest, the most far-reaching, the ones that speak not just to their own region, but to the sky itself. You float now above a modern volcano, one that hasn't erupted in centuries. It's monitored carefully. Satellites watch it. Scientists measure gas, tilt, heat. They know it sleeps, but they also know that if it stirs, it could speak to the entire world in ash and silence. Volcanic winters, as they're sometimes called, are reminders that the earth has many moods. Not angry, not cruel, just varied. The sky above you is not fixed. It is a living reflection of what happens below. And yet, even in these dimmed years, life adapts. People grow hardier. Cultures change. Songs are written in minor keys. Paintings lean toward gray. The world bends, not breaks. You think again of that forgotten summer, the fields that should have bloomed, the picnics never taken, the fires lit too early, too often. But you also think of the stories whispered around those fires, the art born from gloom, the resilience sown into memory. You return slowly now to the present sky. The haze is gone. The stars above are clear and quiet, blinking gently like the pulse of an old song. Below, the island rests in sleep. Its volcano no longer erupts. Its sky no longer steams. But somewhere, in the soil, in the air, in the echo of its past, the memory lingers. You breathe in that memory now, not as fear, but as softness. You understand that even the darkest ash can carry light, that even a cooled world can be beautiful, and that volcanoes, in their most unexpected way, help right not just the ground beneath you, but the sky above. The sky above you clears now, brushed softly by a breeze that smells faintly of salt and old stone. The stars blink gently overhead, as if the sky itself is breathing slower, more deeply. Below, the volcano sleeps beneath its blanket of moss and memory, and nestled into its folds, something unexpected stirs. Life. It always finds a way, doesn't it? Even in the places that seem inhospitable, in the charred fields, the steaming vents, the jagged paths of ancient lava, Life arrives, hesitantly at first, then boldly. Quiet moss becomes curious ferns. Tiny insects arrive on the wind, and before long, there's a chorus of green and hum and pulse, reclaiming what fire once touched. You drift lower now, drawn to a warm patch of land not far from a dormant cone. The ground is cracked but soft, and steam rises gently from unseen veins below. It's not dangerous, just warm, like breath through cupped hands. A lizard lies there, belly pressed to the stone, soaking in the earth's heat. Its eyes are half closed. It does not fear the ground, it trusts it. And in that trust, you begin to see a quiet truth that creatures don't just survive near volcanoes. Some geckos depend on them. Take the birds of the Galapagos. Some species nest in the soft, still warm sand of ancient lava flows. The warmth incubates their eggs more gently than the sun ever could. They don't avoid the past, they settle into it. Or consider the volcano rabbit of Mexico, a shy little creature that burrows among volcanic rock, using its sharp edges as protection and shelter. It hides in the memory of eruptions, curling safely into the shadows of stone. Even beneath the sea, where volcanic vents hiss and bubble in the cold abyss, life thrives. Entire ecosystems cling to hydrothermal chimneys, where the water is hot enough to scald, but filled with minerals that nourish strange, resilient forms, giant tube worms, heat-loving bacteria, ghost white crabs that seem to glow in the dark. They don't just tolerate the heat, they bloom in it. You drift there now, down to the ocean's deepest hallways. The pressure is immense, the darkness complete, but around the volcanic vents, there's a strange glow, like candlelight flickering at the bottom of the world. The creatures here move slowly. They do not panic. They have made peace with fire. It's not just survival, it's an intimacy, a dance. These organisms aren't escaping danger, they're leaning into it, learning its rhythms, living in the folds of its breath. You rise again, back to the surface, where forests now sway above old lava flows. Trees grip the cooled rock with roots like fingers, finding their way across a forgotten piano. Ferns unfold where ash once fell. Even the birds that sing above seem to echo stories that began in fire. And humans, too, have learned this dance. In Iceland, people bathe in geothermal pools, warmed by volcanic heat that drifts up from deep beneath the crust. They build greenhouses on volcanic soil, using the warmth and minerals to grow tomatoes through long winters. In Japan, onsens, natural hot springs, have been places of healing for centuries. People come not to escape the volcano, but to be near it, to be warmed by it, to remember what it gives. There's a kind of reverence in these places, not worship in the traditional sense, but a deep physical gratitude. You feel it in the way people build their homes, low to the ground, with stones that match the mountain, in the way they walk the trails that circle old craters, in the silence they keep when they pass steaming vents, as if listening for the slow language of stone. You imagine now a child growing up on the slope of a dormant volcano. To them, it's not frightening, it's familiar. The land hums beneath their feet. The streams run warm in winter. The soil grows strong crops. Their lullabies are shaped by stories of fire, not as punishment, but as presence. And perhaps they learn early that the earth is not something you control. It's something you live alongside, something that breathes as you do, something you listen to and learn from and lean into when the wind grows cold. The volcano, in turn, is not cruel. It is not angry. It is simply full of motion, of memory, of time. And when it does release its fire, it does so not to punish, but to continue the endless shaping of the world, a necessary unfolding, a reminder that everything changes and nothing is ever truly still. Even now, as you hover above this quiet island, you can feel it. A kind of warmth, not just in the air, but in the story. A warmth that comes from understanding that this fire, this heat, this deep, glowing breath is not your enemy. It's your neighbor, your teacher, your host, and in return, life adapts, life learns, life leans into the warmth and finds its way forward, even through ash and stone. You take a deep breath, slow and full, and let it go. You imagine your own lungs echoing the rhythm of magma below, steady, ancient, alive. And as the stars wheel gently overhead, you know this much to be true. Fire and life are not opposites. They are old friends, dancing slowly on the slopes of time. You stay with the warmth for a while longer, listening to the slow hush of wind moving through trees that once grew from ash. But the earth has more to show you, and now, gently, you begin to descend, not into fire, but into water. The sea waits patiently. It opens beneath you like a mirror turned upside down, the stars above echoing faintly in the rippling dark below. You sink slowly, softly, leaving the surface behind. Light fades around you in calm gradients, blue, then indigo, then the deep and restful black of the ocean's hidden heart. Down here, there is quiet, but not emptiness. As your eyes adjust, you begin to notice shapes, long ridges, dark spires, uneven mounds that stretch for miles in every direction. You are drifting above the ocean floor, but it isn't flat. It is mountainous, sculpted not by erosion or wind, but by something far older, underwater volcanoes. Most people never think of them. They never see them, but they are here, and they are many. In fact, most volcanoes on Earth lie beneath the waves, a vast, secret range of fire and rock, sleeping quietly beneath miles of cold salt water. You move above one now, its flanks wide and sloping, shaped not by explosions, but by flows. Lava behaves differently here. When it erupts underwater, it cools almost instantly, forming rounded shapes called pillow lava. You imagine reaching out and running your hand along one, smooth, bulbous, warm only in memory. These volcanoes don't breathe like the ones on land. They sigh, they whisper, and in doing so, they build. The mid Atlantic ridge stretches out before you, a scar across the seafloor where new crust is born. Magma pushes upward along the seam, forcing the ocean plates apart inch by inch. It is slow, incredibly slow, but constant. You follow the ridge for a while, watching the earth unfold beneath the sea. Here and there, you see faint glows, small eruptions casting light into the dark. They are not violent, they are graceful, like sparks from a deep, sleeping forge. Then, you notice something else. Plumes, not smoke, but shimmering towers of superheated water rising from cracks in the ocean floor. These are hydrothermal vents, chimneys formed by underwater volcanoes. Water seeps into the crust, is heated by magma, then bursts back into the sea, filled with minerals. It rises in dark columns, carrying heat and metal and a kind of strange generosity. And around these vents, life. Bright white crabs scuttle across the rocks. Long, red-tipped tube worms wave like flowers in an invisible breeze. Bacteria cling to the chimney walls, thriving on chemicals instead of sunlight. You've entered a world that shouldn't exist, a world without photosynthesis, without daylight, and yet it pulses with energy. These creatures don't need the sun. Oh, they depend on chemosynthesis, life powered not by light, but by chemical reaction. They live where magma hums beneath their feet, where water scalds but sustains. They remind you, once again, that Earth's story doesn't follow simple rules, that life is never limited by your expectations. You linger near a colony of these tube worms. Their white stalks rise like organ pipes, their red plumes gently swaying. They are silent, but their silence is not stillness. They grow, they breathe, they feed, they belong here. And so do the volcanoes. They are not intruders. They are the reason these creatures exist. Without heat, without those deep, unseen eruptions, there would be no warmth at the bottom of the ocean, no life, no color, just endless dark. You imagine the sea as a great blanket stretched across the earth, and beneath it, the volcanoes breathe, slowly, consistently, a planetary heartbeat beneath the waves. Not all underwater volcanoes are so calm. Of course, some erupt with surprising force, displacing water, sending tsunamis outward in silent rings. But even those are rare. Most simply rise and rest, adding shape to the seafloor, building islands slowly, grain by grain. You drift over one such volcano now. It's still growing, not yet tall enough to reach the air. But one day, perhaps it will break the surface. Perhaps a bird will circle overhead, wondering where to land. Perhaps, eventually, someone will build a home there, plant a garden, walk barefoot across soil made from fire and salt. And maybe they'll never know what lives beneath, what glows in the deep, what feeds in the warmth of stone. The sea carries these secrets gently. It does not shout, it sways. And if you listen long enough, you can almost hear it thanking the volcanoes for the warmth, the minerals, the shape of things. You rise again, leaving the vents behind. The light fades upward, soft and silvery. The surface approaches, glittering with moonlight. You break through gently, like a thought returning to consciousness, and find yourself once more beneath the stars. All around you, the ocean stretches, quiet, ancient, alive, and somewhere beneath it all, the volcanoes continue their slow work, breathing heat into darkness, building mountains you'll never see, and cradling life in the unlikeliest of places. You smile softly, your breath in rhythm with the waves, even here, where the world feels most distant and most vast. You are never far from fire. The surface of the ocean glistens around you, dotted with moonlight that drips like silver paint across the waves. You float for a moment, suspended in the hush between water and sky. The sea beneath you is deep and unknowable, the stars above soft and distant, and you somewhere in between, quiet, warm, wondering. The volcanoes down below continue their slow breathing. But now, as you drift back toward land, something begins to stir within you. Not a tremor, not a fear, just a flicker, a warmth in your chest, a memory that isn't entirely yours, Because the fire inside the earth has a twin inside you. It's not magma, of course, not molten rock or rising gas, but you carry a kind of heat, too, a pressure, a core. You know what it means to hold something inside for a very long time, a thought that simmers, an emotion that builds, a dream that glows in secret. Humans are not made of stone, but they are shaped by invisible forces just as surely as mountains are. You carry your own chambers, your own layers, your own quiet magma, hopes and fears, and wonders that churn in the dark, just beneath the surface. Sometimes you erupt, in laughter, in tears, in love too strong to name, and afterward there's silence, a cooling, a reshaping, just like lava hardening into something new. You walk now through a field of old lava rock, your footsteps echoing softly on the uneven ground. The stones are dark and twisted, frozen in motion. They remind you of feelings that once surged inside, powerful, wordless, impossible to hold. Now they are solid, real, a part of your landscape, and yet, beneath it all, the warmth remains. You felt it before, rising in your chest when you couldn't speak what needed saying, burning at the back of your throat when grief had no name, bubbling behind your eyes in moments of quiet joy. That is your fire, your inner volcano, not destructive, but alive, waiting for you to listen. We are told to stay calm, to be still, but stillness is not always the absence of motion. Sometimes it's the choice to hold our energy wisely. Volcanoes know this. They spend decades, centuries, simply holding, pressurizing, thinking, as mountains do, and then, when the time is right, they release, not in anger, but in inevitability. You too have moments like this, times when you can no longer hold everything inside, when something must rise, a decision, a change, a truth. These are not eruptions to fear, they are expressions of what has been waiting. You pause by a pool of rainwater collected in a crater of an old cinder cone. The sky is reflected there, soft and perfect. The water is still, but you know that beneath the ground, heat still lingers. The volcano is resting, watching, healing. So are you. We do not often think of ourselves as landscapes, but we are, full of layers, shaped by time, weathered by experience. Some parts of us are soft and new, others are ancient, carved from events we no longer name but still carry. We walk with fault lines inside us, and when the pressure shifts, we crack, we sigh, we change. But this is not something to fear. Even the sharpest lava cools eventually. Even the wildest eruption becomes soil. You've done this before. You will do it again. You will rise, release, reshape, over and over. You walk now along the outer rim of the volcano, where wildflowers grow in shallow soil. Their colors are muted by moonlight, soft purples, dusty yellows, deep blues. They lean toward the warmth and toward the crater, as if drawn by memory. You kneel and touch one gently. Its stem is strong, its petals delicate. Life always finds a way back. Inside you, that same force moves quietly, unseen, but always. You are not empty. You are not dormant. You are a being in process. It's slow, deep, a bit beautiful. And even in your most quiet moments, your most forgettable days, something is shifting inside, growing, heating, becoming. You think now of the people who walk beside you in life, each one carrying their own volcano, their own fire, their own invisible pressures and silent landscapes. And perhaps when someone erupts, when their voice cracks, when their emotions surge, it's not about destruction, it's about becoming. The more gently we understand this, the more tenderly we move through the world, because every person is a volcano in their own way, not dangerous, not unstable, just alive, glowing quietly beneath the surface, waiting to be seen. You take a breath. It feels you like steam rising in a quiet chamber. And when you exhale, it's soft, a release, not loud, not sharp, just enough. Above you, the stars remain, patient, familiar. They've seen every eruption, every cooling, every beginning, and still they shine. So you rise again, walking slowly back down the path of cooled lava, your heartbeat matching the slow rhythm of the earth. Inside you, the fire flickers, not to consume, but to remind. You are not made of stone, but you are shaped by pressure, and in that, you are part of something ancient and ongoing. A volcano does not end when it sleeps, neither do you. The path beneath your feet twists gently, worn smooth by time and memory. The night is quiet now, the stars overhead steady and slow. Behind you, the volcano recedes into shadow, a sleeping shape wrapped in stories. Wrapped in you, and ahead, the land stretches wide, speckled with stone, touched by hands long vanished. You walk slowly now, not toward fire, but toward the traces left behind, etchings, patterns, marks in the earth that once meant something urgent, and now speak only in hushes. These are not random scratches or idle decorations. They are calendars, records, quiet chronicles of eruptions remembered and retold. People have always lived near volcanoes, not despite the danger, but often because of the gifts: rich soil, warm water, stones that glimmer when polished. And because they stayed still, they learned to watch, to read the mountain's breath, to note its tremors, to mark its moods. You run your fingers along a wall of blackened stone, its surface etched with grooves worn deep by ancient hands. It's not writing, not quite, but it's not nothing either. A rhythm exists, a sequence. Perhaps it marked eruptions, one after another, like notches on the edge of time. Or maybe it marked safe years, years when the mountain slept and life grew undisturbed. You imagine those who once stood where you now stand, feet bare, eyes watchful, listening not to words, but to wind, to ash, to the silence between birdsong. They noticed when the steam changed scent, when the animals grew restless, when the ground grew hot beneath their homes, and they remembered. In caves, on cliff faces, in rings of stones arranged with careful hands, they left signs, not for beauty, for memory. And you, walking now among the ruins of a long-gone village near a quiet crater, begin to see the pattern. The dwellings are built on high ground, just beyond the reach of old lava flows. The footpaths bend away from the steepest slopes. Wells are dug in cooler places, where the warmth of the earth doesn't rise too close to the surface. Every choice, a response to the mountain, not fear, not worship, awareness. Even in places like Italy or Japan or Central America, where generations have lived in the shadow of volatile peaks, this quiet awareness shapes life. Children grow up knowing the name of the mountain, just as they know the name of the river or the moon. It is not a mystery. It is a neighbor. You sit now at the edge of a stone circle, half buried in moss. Perhaps it once aligned with a solstice, or a particular star, or the date of a past eruption. The meanings are lost, but the care is not. To live beside a volcano is to live with rhythm. The earth speaks in intervals, some fast, like the rumble that warns of movement, others slow, like the centuries between eruptions, and human beings, so full of motion and speech, still found time to listen. In Hawaii, chants once told the story of Pele, the volcano goddess, her power, her moods, her path of fire across the land. These chants weren't superstition, they were survival stories, encoded with wisdom, where the lava flowed, how the land changed, what signs to watch for. In Indonesia, elders passed down tales of mountains with names like Merapi and Sinabung, not just names, but personalities. These volcanoes are known like family. The stories teach not only reverence, but also caution, where to farm, where not to sleep. You begin to understand that volcanic history is not only written in science, but in culture, in song, in ritual, in the way houses are built facing away from the vent. And sometimes the stories warn of forgetting. A village, once destroyed by lava, rebuilt in the same spot. A generation that does not remember the last eruption, only to be caught unaware by the next. Time is long, but memory is short. So people carved calendars in stone, built monuments to remind, told stories by firelight, so no one would forget that beneath the grass, the earth still breathes. You walk now toward an old temple, its roof long gone, its pillars leaning with fatigue. But etched into one of the stones is an image of a volcano, stylized and sharp. Below it, waves, perhaps the sea, perhaps the sky, and between them, people, tiny, arms raised. Were they afraid? Were they thankful? You can't know. But you feel the emotion in the image, the awareness of something larger, deeper, older. And in that awareness, peace. Not every record was kept in stone. In Iceland, monks once wrote in ink and vellum, noting the dates of eruptions and the years of ashfall that followed. Their writings weren't poetic, just careful, exact, because when a volcano wakes, knowing the past can help shape the future. You pause on the temple steps, looking out across the plain. Once, this land was covered in fire. Then it cooled, then it grew, and now all that remains are the gentle reminders, shapes in stone, stories in air, names passed down like lullabies. You sit there for a while, feeling the warmth of the rock beneath you. It's not hot anymore, but it remembers, and in that memory, there is safety. Calendars carved in stone don't move. They wait, they watch, they listen for the rhythm to return. You take a breath, hold it, release. The volcano is quiet now, but you remember. You rise gently from the warm stone steps, your fingers trailing along the edge of that carved volcano, its lines softened by time and wind. The plain stretches wide before you, open and quiet. But some memories are not buried in the earth. Some remain suspended in ash, caught mid-breath, mid-thought, mid-life. You begin to drift again, carried by a current of memory, this time toward a different land, a land that once bustled with voices and trade and music, where people walked stone streets, bought bread from open stalls, laughed beneath hanging vines, and pointed to the volcano in the distance as if it were just a mountain. Pompeii. The name feels delicate on your tongue. Ancient, yes, but intimate too. You land there now, not in the present, not among tourists and glass cases, but on a day long ago, just before everything changed. The streets are alive. You hear the soft clatter of sandals, the distant hum of market chatter. Windows are open. Grapes hang heavy in gardens. In kitchens, ovens crackle with morning heat. Children run barefoot along the alleys, their laughter echoing against stone. Above it all, the mountain watches, Vesuvius, silent, unassuming, not angry, just present. You follow a baker through his morning rounds. He wipes flour from his brow, unaware of how brief this moment will be. You step into a courtyard where a mosaic glistens with dew. A woman hums as she waters her plants. It is also alive, so very now, but the mountain is thinking. Deep beneath its surface, pressure shifts, gas accumulates, magma presses upward, slow and patient. No one hears it, no one feels it, and even if they did, what would they do? You hover in the air above the city, watching the final hours unfold like pages turning in a book. And then, without warning, the mountain begins to speak, a tremble, a sigh, and then an eruption that rends the sky. The noise is impossible to describe, like a thunderclap stretched into a day. Ash rises, fast and thick, darkening the sun. People scream, some run, some pray, some pause, unable to believe what's happening. The ground shakes, roofs fall, light disappears. You want to look away, but you don't. You stay with them, because what happens next is not just tragedy, it's preservation, a kind of deep, unasked for memory. As the ash falls, it wraps the city in layers, not with fire, but with stillness. Time halts. A woman clutches a child. A man covers his mouth with a cloth. A dog curls into itself, waiting for silence, and then the silence comes. The ash settles. The world breathes out, and Pompeii is no more, but not forgotten. You drift forward now, through time, through centuries. The city remains buried, but whole. Houses still stand beneath the ground. Tables still hold cups. Walls still whisper with painted frescoes. Beneath your feet, a memory sleeps. Then, nearly 2,000 years later, the ash is brushed away. Slowly, carefully, archaeologists uncover what was hidden, and the world sees Pompeii again, not as a ruin, but as a moment, perfectly preserved, as if the people simply stepped out for a while and left everything waiting. You walk those streets now, the ones uncovered by gentle hands. The bakery still has its oven. The garden still has its mosaic. The footprints are still there, pressed into stone, and it feels somehow respectful, not eerie, not theatrical, just honest. The volcano didn't take their voices, it saved them. Graffiti on a wall tells a joke. Another shares a name. A tiled floor depicts mythic beasts, as vivid as if it were finished last week. And then, in the quiet corner of a home, a mural of flowers, soft and blooming, painted in such fine detail you can almost smell them. Pompeii isn't just a story of loss, it's a story of how the earth, in its strange, unplanned way, sometimes holds on for us. Of course, Vesuvius still stands. You drift toward it now, rising up its slope. The crater yawns like an old mouth. Steam curls from its edges, lazy and light. The mountain is calm, not empty, just resting. Visitors walk its paths every day now, some chatting, some silent, some unsure of how to feel. You understand? There's reverence here, not because the mountain is dangerous, but because it remembers. And you remember too, not just the eruption, but the life before it. The baker with flour on his brow, the woman humming among her plants, the child laughing down the alley. They lived fully, and the mountain, in its way, captured them in a frame of ash. You return to the edge of the city, standing now where ruins meet the horizon. The air is still, the light is soft, and in the distance, Vesuvius blinks slowly beneath the clouds. You feel no fear, only gratitude, because to walk where Pompeii once lived is to know that nothing truly disappears. It may be buried, it may sleep, but in time it rises again, sometimes in stone, sometimes in memory, always in quiet awe. You breathe in, you breathe out, and somewhere beneath your feet, the earth continues to keep its stories safe. You linger at the boundary between ruin and sky, where ancient stone gives way to open air, and the last whispers of Pompeii dissolve into quiet. Vesuvius rests behind you now, its broad shoulders wrapped in mist, its breath steady and slow. But volcanoes do not always whisper. Some, when they rise, speak in flame, and you turn now toward them, the fire-born giants, the ones that roar instead of rumble, the ones whose eruptions reshape maps and minds alike. Not all volcanoes build gently. Some tear their way into the sky, their lava fountains reaching higher than birds, their plumes blackening midday into dusk. You drift now toward one such mountain, not in fear, but in reverence, because even fire has form, even chaos has a rhythm. Mount Saint. Helen's once stood tall and still, a snow-capped peak nestled among trees and clouds. But in 1980, it changed. The mountain swelled quietly, like a breath held too long. Gases hissed from new cracks. The ground rose in slow, tense pulses. People watched. Some stayed, and then without warning, the north face collapsed. The blast that followed wasn't upward. It was sideways, an avalanche of ash, gas, and stone, sweeping trees from their roots and reshaping the mountain in seconds. You drift above that moment now, slowly, from a safe and dreaming distance. The roar is softened by time, the destruction blurred by memory. You see not the violence, but the scale, the force that rewrote a landscape and made room for something new, because even here, in the most dramatic eruptions, creation and destruction hold hands. You drift across a field of downed trees, their trunks all pointing in the same direction, like compass needles spun by wind. The land is scarred, but not silent. Even now, decades later, wildflowers bloom where ash once smothered. Elk graze in the open meadows. New forests begin their slow return, and in the crater, a dome rises, a slow, persistent bulge of new rock, a reminder that the volcano is still thinking. There's beauty in that stubbornness. You think now of Mount Etna in Sicily, a volcano so alive it seems to pulse with the seasons. Etna doesn't sleep for long. It murmurs, it glows, it releases ribbons of lava that wind down its flanks in glowing lines, visible from villages perched safely on nearby slopes. People live here, plant here, laugh here. They watch the mountain from balconies and vineyards. They don't flee, they adapt. They know when to leave. They know when to stay. And in between, they live. That is what volcanoes teach, over and over, how to hold two truths at once. This mountain may burn, and this mountain may give. You float now above Kilauea in Hawaii, where lava once poured steadily from vents like honey from a tilted jar, not fast, not explosive, but endless. It crept across roads, swallowed forests, reached the sea, and still you people returned, not out of defiance, out of love. They walk barefoot on newly cooled rock, warm beneath their soles. They tell stories about Pele, goddess of fire, who dances with the earth and shapes the islands with every step. They offer lies to her, leave gifts at steaming craters, not to appease her, but to acknowledge her. She is not a myth. She is motion, a reminder that the earth is alive and does not ask permission to change. You hover now above a house half buried in black lava. Its roof peeks out like a thought nearly forgotten. It is not tragic. It is not even lonely. It is simply part of the landscape now. Fire made its choice. The earth moved, and people made peace. Not all eruptions are so generous. In Guatemala, in Indonesia, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, volcanoes sometimes arrive without warning, sweeping through towns with no time to flee. Ash blankets cities, lava bisects villages, and in the aftermath, grief settles like dust. You drift above those places too, quietly, with care, because volcanoes do not choose what they destroy, but people choose how they return. In so many of these places, you see the same thing: resilience, children playing on hardened flows, gardens blooming where ash fell thickest, markets rebuilt in the shadow of still smoking cones, people rebuilding not once, but again and again, because the fire comes, but so does the rain, so does the green. And so, you begin to see the paradox clearly. Volcanoes are not good or bad. They are becoming. They are motion made visible. You rise now, gently, above a volcanic plain at dusk. The air is still warm. A thin plume curls from a distant peak, pink in the fading light. All around, the earth holds its breath, not in fear, in pause, the kind of pause that comes between notes in a song. You let your thoughts settle here, in the knowing that even when mountains catch fire, they do not end. They reshape, they teach, they burn, yes, but they also leave room for newness, and often they leave behind a silence more profound than sound. You close your eyes, if only for a moment, and listen to the heat beneath your feet, to the wind that carries old ash and new seeds, to the fire that rises not in anger, but in rhythm. And when you open your eyes again, the mountain is still there, warmed by its own breath, waiting, as all things wait, for the next becoming. The mountain remains in view as you drift onward, its quiet plume rising like a question left unanswered. The air carries a lingering warmth, but no urgency. Beneath the surface, however, something stirs, not in fury, but in complexity, because even fire has feelings, in a way, and magma, for all its molten mystery, has moods. You settle into the folds of a valley nearby, where instruments hum softly in the background. Wires stretch across rock. Small metal boxes blink with data. This is where science leans in close, listening with patient ears. Geologists, volcanologists, chemists, they do not watch the mountain with fear. They watch it with curiosity, with reverence, with a quiet hope of understanding, Because magma does not rise without reason. It builds, yes, but it also shifts in texture, in gas content, in temperature. These are the moods it carries, subtle hints of its state of mind, if magma had one. And scientists, with their seismometers and gas spectrometers and tilt meters, have learned to read the signs. You imagine them now, walking slowly along the crater's edge, sensors in hand, boots crunching against cooled ash. They check for changes. Has the ground swelled? Is the gas composition different than last week? Is the tremor pattern steady or scattered? They gather pieces of a story, written not in letters, but in motion and heat. You begin to feel it too. A deep, slow pulse in the earth, not threatening, just alive. Some magmas are calm, low in gas, rich in basalt, eager to flow without fuss. Others are tense, full of silica, sticky and thick, prone to hold in pressure until the only option is to burst. It's not unlike people, Miss Reilly. Some communicate freely, easily. Others hold everything in until release becomes inevitable. You hover above a magma chamber now, deep beneath the mountain. It's not a bubbling cauldron like cartoons might suggest. It's a swelling reservoir, pressurized and complex. Crystals form and dissolve. Gases accumulate in pockets. Temperature rises by fractions over weeks, months, sometimes years. The magma isn't impatient, it's precise. Scientists have learned to detect these changes, tiny shifts in the frequency of earthquakes, subtle tilts in the mountain slope. They use satellite images to detect heat. Some even sniff the air, measuring the ratios of sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide released in invisible breaths from the vents. Those are the volcano's tells, its little giveaways. And when enough of them align, when the signs all whisper the same thing, a warning is issued. Not always an alarm, sometimes just a raised eyebrow, a caution to those nearby. The mountain is thinking again. It might speak soon. You drift past an observatory now, tucked into the mountainside. Inside, a monitor glows softly, showing real-time data streams, a jagged line marking a tremor, a map of gas distribution, a live camera feed of the crater. A woman leans forward in her chair, eyes scanning gently. She is not afraid. She is listening. Understanding a volcano is like learning a new language made of breath, heat, and pause. It requires more than instruments. It requires patience, humility, the acceptance that not every answer will be clear, and not every mood will lead to an eruption. Sometimes the mountain changes its mind. You move now to places where science and community meet. Towns nestled near active peaks, where sirens have been installed and drills are practiced. Schools teach children how to recognize the signs, what to pack, where to go, how to move safely, preparedness, not panic. In these places, the volcano is not a monster. It's a neighbor with a complicated personality, one that people respect and check in on regularly. How's the mountain doing today, they might ask, like checking the weather, and someone will answer resting, or grumbling a little, or occasionally. We're keeping a close eye. You pause beside a small shop, its windows filled with postcards showing lava flows from decades past. On the wall inside hangs a faded newspaper clipping, an old photo of an eruption, the plume high and magnificent. But beside it is another photo, people smiling, rebuilding. The mood shifts again, because the science of magma is not only for understanding eruption, it's for understanding renewal, for tracking how lava reshapes rivers, how ash nourishes soil, how heat creates new paths for water and life. Volcanoes do not just end things, they edit, they compose. You find yourself back at the crater's edge. The sun is rising now, casting soft gold across the dark ridges. Steam rises from unseen fissures, curling into the cold air. A sensor beeps quietly in the distance, measuring, noting, remembering. The volcano, for now, is steady. The magma is quiet, but its mood is always shifting. You understand this now, not as danger, but as rhythm, as personality, as process. You take a breath, and for a moment, you imagine your own thoughts like magma, rising, swirling, changing texture with time. Some thoughts easy and flowing, others thick and slow, all of them alive, all of them shaping the landscape within you. And just like the scientists perched on this mountain, you learn to listen, not with fear, but with care. You remain near the crater's edge a moment longer, warmed by the light of the rising sun and the hush of the mountain beneath you. The air is calm now. The steam rising from the vents is thin and steady, like breath released after a long-held pause. There is no shaking, no crackling, only stillness. The volcano is sleeping, but a volcano's sleep is not like yours. It does not drift into dreams or forget itself. Its sleep is a different kind of stillness, aware, alive, and layered with memory. You begin to drift downward through the crust and cooled rock, past the lingering heat of magma chambers that no longer press or stir. Even here, in this resting state, the land feels full of potential. Some volcanoes sleep for decades, others for centuries or longer. Their names fade from memory, their slopes covered in grass and trees, their stories buried like fossils. And yet, lo, deep within, the breath remains, slow, measured, waiting. You glide over such a mountain now, one so quiet, it's mistaken for something permanent. Children sled down its snowy flanks in winter. In summer, hikers follow trails cut across its shoulders, unaware that the paths they walk were once rivers of lava. They pause to picnic beside strange, sharp rocks, not knowing these shapes were born in fire, and the volcano does not mind. It rests. Some sleeping volcanoes are so deeply buried in time that scientists hesitate to call them active, but they don't say dead either, not truly, because volcanoes don't die in the way we understand. They don't vanish, they wait. And sometimes, their waiting stretches longer than memory can reach. You hover now above Yellowstone, a supervolcano, vast and gentle on the surface, dressed in forests, waterfalls, and steaming geysers. Tourists come to see Old Faithful erupt in playful jets of boiling water, but beneath this wonderland sleeps something enormous, a reservoir of magma wide as a mountain range. It hasn't erupted in over 600,000 years. Still, the land breathes. Geysers hiss, mud pots bubble, heat escapes through the soil like sighs from an ancient chest. Yellowstone doesn't rage. It murmurs. Scientists monitor it closely, but they do so with calm. There's no panic here, only patience, because even a sleeping volcano tells its story. In hot springs, the color of morning light. In sulfur-scented gusts that rise through pine. In the subtle uplift of ground, measured in millimeters each year. It's not silence, it's pause, Not far from there, in Oregon, Mount Mazama once stood tall until one day it erupted so completely that the summit collapsed. What remains now is Crater Lake, a still, blue bowl of water ringed by cliffs. The lake is deep, so it's pristine, impossibly clear. It mirrors the sky with perfect calm. You drift above it now, looking down at the quiet shimmer, a caldera, a resting place for fire. What once erupted with fury now reflects the clouds. Even in sleep, a volcano continues to create beauty, and sometimes they sleep so long we build lives around them. Cities grow on their flanks, roads cut across their ridges, crops flourish in their rich soil, people settle, raise families, grow old beneath peaks that haven't moved in generations. And still, the earth remembers. You pass now over Naples, where Vesuvius looms quietly beyond rooftops and cathedrals. It hasn't erupted in decades. Some call it overdue, others call it merciful, but either way, the city keeps living, softly tuned to the mountain's rhythm. Somewhere, someone glances at the sky each morning and notes the mountain's shape, just to be sure, not with fear, with habit. You begin to notice something gentle and universal in this quiet vigilance, a kind of respect that isn't loud. It's woven into daily life, a readiness shaped not by anxiety, but by memory. That's what sleeping volcanoes give us, not just land, but stories. And those stories teach us how to live beside something powerful. Even the word dormant suggests a rest, not an ending. It comes from the Latin dormire, to sleep. A dormitory is a place of rest. A dormant volcano is simply one with its eyes closed, listening inward. You drift now above a caldera in South America, where llamas graze and wind moves in long, slow exhalations. The land here is ancient. The rocks are dark and soft, and every so often the ground trembles, not enough to harm, just enough to remind. The volcano isn't gone, it's dreaming, and just like dreams, it may one day wake, but there is grace in the sleep, a beauty in the waiting, a lesson in the long pause. You begin to wonder how many other forces around you sleep unnoticed, emotions long buried, ideas not yet spoken, memories tucked away beneath your own surface. Maybe they are not gone, maybe they are simply resting, waiting for the right moment to rise, to reshape, to breathe, just like a volcano. You take one more look at the quiet slopes around you, the grass swaying gently, the birds flying low, the crater filled with stillness, the earth beneath warm but unhurried. This is what peace looks like, not emptiness, but potential, resting in its own rhythm. And so you move on, carrying the hush with you, a lullaby hummed by stone, because even fire needs rest, and even in sleep, the mountain watches the sky. You drift quietly away from the caldera's rim, where sleep lingers in the folds of the land like mist in early morning. Behind you, the resting mountain fades into memory, its silence stretching outward, wrapping the air like a shawl. And ahead, something else begins to rise. Not fire, not ash, but understanding. You're starting to see it now, that volcanoes are not just episodes, not singular events that explode, vanish, and retreat. They are part of something circular, a rhythm, an old, patient cycle that has no real beginning and no neat end, because every eruption is also a birth. The lava that once spilled like chaos becomes stone, then soil, then forest. The ash that once filled the sky filters into valleys, feeding ferns and trees and quiet fields of grain. Even the most dramatic eruption, the loudest plume, the most catastrophic wave of heat and debris, given enough time, even these moments smooth into something that grows. Destruction is not the full story. You hover now above a cooled lava plain, where tiny green shoots break through the cracks in stone. Each one is a soft defiance, a gentle rebellion, life insisting on return. You watch as wind brings seeds from nearby hills, as birds leave droppings that carry new growth, as rain seeps into broken rock, loosening minerals and feeding roots. This land was fire, and now it is becoming again. You move slowly over an old lava field in Iceland, one so ancient that it no longer looks volcanic. Moss covers everything in velvet green. The ground undulates like frozen waves. People walk across it quietly, careful not to disturb the soft layer that took centuries to grow. It's a carpet made of patience, made of time, and it whispers a secret that volcanoes have known forever. Nothing ends, everything changes. Even the mountains that collapse in on themselves leave something behind. Crater lakes, valleys of fertile ash, rock formations that tell stories to those who listen. You pass over one now, where columnar basalt rises like great stone organ pipes, the result of slow cooling and quiet order. Lava, made symmetrical, fire, shaped into elegance. It's here that you understand something subtle. Volcanoes are not interruptions in the Earth's story. They are chapters, maybe even the punctuation, the exclamation marks, the long pauses, the unexpected turns that make the story breathe. In the Andes, in Japan, in the Pacific Northwest, old lava flows have become vineyards. Hillsides that once glowed with magma now grow grapes that taste of minerals and history. People drink wine made from fire-touched soil and speak of notes they cannot name. Beneath their feet, the mountain still dreams. Elsewhere, in Tanzania, Mount Ol Doinyo Lengai continues to erupt with natrocarbonatite lava, cooler, darker, more fluid than most. It pours like oil, glistening black, almost quiet. Its ash feeds a nearby plain where wildebeests graze and flamingos settle in pale pink clouds. This volcano does not roar. It whispers, and what it gives, life accepts. And then there are the islands, Hawaii, Iceland, Santorini, formed from nothing but pressure and patience. Their shapes are stories, written in layers of eruption and erosion. Their cliffs reveal histories that stretch beyond memory. People walk there now, not as survivors, but as caretakers, tending to the land, growing gardens on cooled flows, swimming in coves once carved by fire. You picture a child born on one of these islands. They play in the shadow of a volcano, not with fear, but with wonder. They hear the stories, feel the heat beneath the sand, smell the sulfur in the rain. And maybe one day, they'll climb to the crater's edge and look out at a horizon that only exists because the Earth chose to rise. The volcano did not end something. It made something possible. That's the rhythm, isn't it? Rising, cooling, growing. You find yourself back at the base of a sleeping mountain, where flowers bloom along a trail once etched by lava. A bird calls nearby. The ground is warm beneath your feet, but not urgent. You press your hand to a stone, rough, pitted, once liquid. It holds no grudge. It holds only heat and time and change. And maybe in your own quiet way, you do too, because all things transform. anger softens, grief settles, joy returns, dreams shift, you erupt, you cool, you grow, you carry old stories, but you are not defined by them. You are always becoming, just like the earth, or just like the volcano. You lift your gaze once more to the sky. It's vast and pale, streaked with the thinnest trails of cloud. Somewhere, a mountain is waking. Somewhere else, one is falling asleep. And all across the planet, magma pulses, lava cools, ash drifts, seeds take root. The cycle continues. And so do you. You remain still now, not out of hesitation, but out of peace. There is no need to hurry. The journey has taken you deep beneath the earth and high into the sky, across ash-covered cities, glowing undersea ridges, and moss-draped calderas. You've watched fire rise and soften. You've seen the world shape itself and shape us in return. And yet, one final truth remains, not in the eruptions or the silence, but in the ever-present warmth that lies just beneath your feet. Wherever you are, wherever you rest tonight, the earth glows quietly below you. You may be far from a volcano. The land around you may be flat, or forested, or paved with streets and sidewalks. But beneath the crust, far below basements and bedrock, the same heat that carved islands and swallowed cities still moves in slow, steady pulses, not rushing, not loud, but always there. A quiet presence, a steady hand. You imagine yourself sinking through the floor now, not falling, just floating downward, through layers of human history, past stone and fossil, past pockets of ancient water, until the rock begins to warm. The light grows redder, softer, everything slows, and there it is again, the deep pulse of the earth. It isn't fierce, it isn't dramatic, it's rhythmic, like a lullaby hummed in the dark. The mantle shifts and flows, a slow, warm river of softened stone, and you float beside it, comforted not by stillness, but by motion. This warmth, this glow, it doesn't sleep, it doesn't stop, it simply is. In your daily life, it's easy to forget this, to walk through the world thinking of surface things, keys, clocks, screens, plans. But beneath it all, every step you take is touched by something ancient, a planet that is still, even now, becoming itself. You drift back upward, slowly now, rising toward the crust. You pass through old lava tubes, curving, silent tunnels once carved by fire. Some are now empty, some have become homes for bats, or reservoirs for water. Even these passages, once fierce, have softened with time. Then, back through the layers of soil, rich, dark, and full of memory. Soil built on ash, broken stone, and patience. The trees above grow tall not despite the volcanoes, but because of them. Their roots drink from mineral-rich ground. Their leaves stretch toward skies shaped by ancient plumes. You return now to the surface, and everything feels different. The air is still cool, the stars remain. But now you sense the warmth beneath you, not in temperature, but in awareness. You understand that even in silence, the earth is humming. Even in darkness, it is glowing. And it isn't just the planet, it's you, because you, too, carry a quiet fire inside, a warmth that isn't loud, but real, the kind that keeps dreams alive when the world feels cold, the kind that fuels growth, a change, and quiet strength. You think of every volcano you visited in your mind's journey, the ancient ones, forgotten by time, the underwater mountains, still building in secret, the fiery peaks that roar, and the gentle slopes that heal, each one different, each one necessary, and somehow all of them connected. They are not just natural disasters, they are natural rhythms, rising, cooling, resting, beginning again. And just as volcanoes shape the earth, they shape you, not in ash or lava, but in perspective. They remind you of impermanence, that even the tallest mountain can fall. They remind you of endurance, that life returns, even after fire. They remind you of balance, that creation and destruction are not enemies, but dance partners. You sit now beneath the stars, your body warm against the earth, your breath slow. Around you, the land is quiet, but you feel connected to something beneath it all, deeper than sound, older than language. A quiet glow, not meant to wake you, but to comfort you, to remind you that beneath every ending is a beginning, that beneath every cool night is a warm planet, that beneath every footstep is a story still unfolding. You lie back, letting the weight of gravity hold you gently, as if the earth itself were cradling you in its palm. The ground beneath you is solid, but not still. It moves slowly, like a story whispered too softly to disturb your sleep. And perhaps, when you close your eyes tonight, you'll dream of lava flowing like liquid thought, of mountains that breathe, of ash that turns to forest, of silence that carries memory. And perhaps, even if just for a moment, you'll feel the gentle pulse of magma deep within the earth and know that you are resting on something both ancient and alive. You are part of this rhythm, this warmth, this quiet glow. And as the stars blink slowly overhead and the earth turns silently beneath you, everything holds still, just long enough to let you fall asleep.